Elizabeth has shown Canadians the type of excellence that we should demand from our MPs. She has shown us that we can vote big, vote brave, vote green, and in doing so, change the world for the better.
With enough of your help, we'll be sending Elizabeth back to Ottawa this October. But this time, she won't be going it alone. We've got a whole team of amazing Green candidates throughout the region, making BC well-positioned to elect enough Green MPs to seize the balance of power, allowing us to demand the next Canadian Prime Minister to take strong action on climate change and democratic reform. This is a dream we're working towards, and because of one phenomenal woman, we have what it takes to turn this dream into a reality. Without further ado, we are honored to introduce the woman whose hard work has brought us to where we are today, who continues to lead us to ever greater heights, a woman who has served her community well and made us proud. We are honored to introduce the one and only Elizabeth May.
Thank you. Thank you all so much, honestly. Thank you all so much for being here, especially, and as you've heard mentioned earlier, I think Adam was the one who mentioned it, to be in this hangar. Of course, a lot of us have memories. We had two big rallies here in 2011. We had one that Arthur was here, and also Bill Henderson was here, and Des Kennedy, my friend, who did a wonderful reading from Denman Island. We had an amazing group of people speaking, and my dear friend Fraser Smith and Vicki Husband and Ken Wu moderated. I know, how many of you were at that rally? That was our first big rally at this hangar. And then we said, well, we need a good place where all the volunteers can come for the victory night party. And right away we thought of, well, the hangar's big enough, and if we can't fit everybody in, we won't break fire laws if we leave the doors open and everybody can get in. So this is a really nostalgic moment as well as a perfect place. Here among so many of you who were part of that campaign, some of you hadn't seen since then in terms of, canvassers, and I just saw one young canvasser. He was 13 when he canvassed with me last time. He's all grown up. Tim, I don't know where you are, but I thought, my gosh, I haven't seen you since. And I think we're going to have that feeling over and over again as we organize for this campaign. But I wanted to reflect on the last 4 years just a bit. And yes, it is true, I am Canada's hardest working MP. Maybe I'm the hardest working MP in the history of time. I'm not sure. I don't want to talk about it too much. Adam mentioned I should take a day off. I did figure out the other day that since early January, I've had 3 days off. So that's kind of not enough. But anyway, when more Green MPs join me, I promise you, I will take time off. Because we've got a lot of work to do. So 4 years ago today, when I took the oath of office to be a member of Parliament, and I was joined by many of my volunteers from here and all my kids, and it was just it was quite overwhelming to take the oath of office and sign the great ledger to be a member of Parliament and find my seat in the House of Commons. And I have worked many, many, many long hours in that. And Sarah mentioned being in my seat for solidly. I couldn't leave. If I left my desk at all, I wouldn't have been able to vote on each one of my amendments, because the voting process in the House of Commons is interesting and somewhat archaic. But if you are not there at the moment the speaker reads out the thing we're voting on, and not still there when they announce how the vote went, your vote doesn't count. So you can't vote and run. You have to, I was there the whole time. So I just thought I'd summarize some of what I was able to do, because I remember distinctly, right after we went from, and you all remember this, we went straight from Greens can't get elected, ever, anywhere. A lot of you have probably heard me tell the story of the time just about a few days before the vote. And I did an interview with CKNW in which the host said, with all due respect, you couldn't get elected dog catcher. Yeah, at the time I thought, funny how that all due respect thing didn't make it to the end of the sentence. But with some time to digest his question, I realized that he was absolutely right. Because I would never run for dog catcher. I would be a terrible dog catcher. I would not be able to surrender any breed of mutt or Heinz 57 rescue dog. There's no way I'd leave them anywhere where they were at risk of being euthanized. I would be hoarding dogs. I would be condemned as a dog catcher immediately. It would break all the health laws. I mean, it's not thinkable. So fortunately, I did know that although I would be a terrible dog catcher, I was running to be your member of parliament, and I was fairly certain that I would be an excellent member of parliament because I love parliament. And I love democracy. And I knew the rules of parliament well enough to know that it simply wasn't true what the national media said next. They seamlessly moved from Greens will never get elected, right, to, well, they're all happy a Green got elected, but we'll never hear from her again because one MP can't do anything. Now again, when you reflect on that, that's actually true if you're an MP in the Conservative, Liberal, and Democratic Party. And honestly, I do mean this from the bottom of my heart. My friends in all those parties are wonderful people, but they're not allowed to color outside the lines. And the lines are carefully drawn and enforced. So what I found was what I'd always believed to be true, that just as one person can change the world, just as one citizen can stop a horrible project, just as one person can imagine and create something brilliant in their community, so too can one MP do anything by using the rules to maximum effect and being there all the time. So in the last 4 years, I've been, well, first of all, the thanks are entirely to the voters of Saanich Gulf Islands. What a brave thing to do, really brave. To take a chance like that, you know, to defeat a sitting cabinet minister and to decide, right, we're gonna get behind Elizabeth and have the first Green MP represent us, and we're gonna operate on the hope and the faith that she'll do the things she said she'd do, and that will make it worthwhile. And that's an extraordinary honor for me, that many voters would decide to take a chance and change the way they'd always voted, whether they used to vote Conservative or they used to vote New Democrat or they used to vote Liberal, or quite a lot who decided to stop voting altogether. Because we did have, and not to correct Nathan, but we did have actually, other than one riding in Prince Edward Island, Saanich Gulf Islands at 75% voter turnout had the highest voter turnout in Canada. And that's how we won. So, I wrote up a quick list of my pluses and minuses, of my successes and challenges. And you've heard some of them already from Sarah and Nathan. To have my private members bill, I don't know if you know that fewer than 2% of private members bills ever pass. So my private members bill for a national Lyme disease strategy became law in December of last year. I also worked with a wonderful constituent, Judy Peterson, and it's her campaign and her victory, but I put together what it took to get the DNA data bank created so that we can cross-reference for missing persons against crime scenes. It's not up and running yet, but it is passed in law, and the money will be there in 2017. So that's a success. And I'm enormously happy that we kept the Plant Health Center open. But one thing you may not, yeah, it's wonderful. It is wonderful. There were 80 jobs plus what happened to Dominion Brook Park and all kinds of considerations. But the thing that's really interesting, because I kind of worried about Saanich Gulf Islands. Everybody's being so brave. But what if the Conservatives decide to punish us here? That would be awful. But there's no evidence of that at all. I have a lot of friends who are members of Parliament in the Conservative Party who tried to stop federal facilities in their own ridings from being closed, and they couldn't. In fact, the only federal facility announced for closure where the decision was reversed anywhere in Canada is the Plant Health Centre in Saanich Gulf Islands. And again, working across party lines, I've been successful in bringing millions and millions of dollars into UVic for their Smart Oceans project, as well as for other operations and projects here in the riding. I've been astonished by it being possible. And I've represented, and my wonderful team in the constituency office with the commitment to nonpartisan, compassionate help to anyone who walks through our door. We fight like hell for our constituents. We don't give up. And we have helped literally hundreds and hundreds of residents of Saanich Gulf Islands reunite families over horrible objections from Immigration Canada. We've helped refugees, we've stopped deportations, we've solved pension problems, and and the other day I managed to get you 5 more days to file your tax returns. That was good. So, the challenges have been horrible. But I think about it, and here's the thing. I sit down at my little desk, and the reason I was the first member of Parliament to understand how devastating Bill C-38, the Omnibus Budget Bill in spring 2012 was, is I was the first person to read it. Bill comes out for first reading, okay, it's 400 pages. I just sit at my desk and go page by page. Well, I'm also multitasking and listening to the debates, but when I read C-38, it's the only time I ever sat at my desk and started to cry from reading a bill. I began to panic. I jumped up. I ran into the opposition lobby. I looked for any friend in one of the other parties to say, are you reading this? Do you see this? They're killing the Fisheries Act. They're destroying environmental assessment. They're getting rid of the National Roundtable. I went through the litany of things. I went out to the media in a scrum, and I held this 400-page bill, trying to flip through it and describe chapter and verse what this bill was going to do, and a crowd of reporters stood around me. They said later it was the longest scrum they'd ever had because it took me a half an hour to even canvass the worst bits. They didn't cover it for a long time because it took about 2 weeks for the other parties to catch up. And then they began to say C-38 is dangerous. By then I'd written analyses and I'd written blogs. Being the first to spot something awful is important because it's the alarm bell, it's the wake-up call, it's the... And it was the same. I was watching and waiting for the Canada-China Investment Treaty. We didn't stop it, but I saw it coming and I kept trying to stop it, and we alerted people. And our wonderful, which is not quite nominated yet, but our wonderful candidate for Vancouver Island North Powell River, Brenda Sayers, represented and got the Hoopachasset First Nation to go to court to try to protect all Canadians from Stephen Harper selling out our sovereignty to Beijing. Which reminds me that I want to say how grateful I am to Chief Vern Jacks for being here tonight, for helping us to welcome us here to traditional territories, and to say that in all of the issues where I have seen people on the front lines, where the issues matter the most, it's First Nations in the lead, and we're following. We stand in solidarity every time, but we can never stand alone. We have to be there together in solidarity. So all of these issues, all of these fights, and C-51, the Anti-Terrorism Act, yes, again, I was the first one to stand up because I read it. And it was the first time I had a visceral reaction. I didn't weep from reading C-51, but I got cold chills. And I started thinking, I can't believe this isn't a democracy. I can't believe this bill is before us. I can't believe it will pass. And of course, it's passed the House, and they've done time allocation in the Senate. We'll probably pass in the Senate next week, and we will have to have it repealed after this election. So, I'm optimistic about this election. You have to know that. I'm so optimistic about rescuing Canada, taking our country back, getting back the policies and the laws that I never imagined would be scrapped, getting rid of Statistics Canada's ability to tell us what's going on. I mean, who would have thought we'd have a prime minister who disliked statistics, who so hated evidence that he wanted to bury those and muzzle those who say things. It's not just shoot the messenger, it's fire the messenger. There are no messengers, there are no voices to tell Canadians what's going on. We have to restore evidence-based decision-making. We have to restore essential democracy. We have to stop omnibus budget bills. We have to get rid of the idea that a prime minister who sees a vote he's going to lose can go to the Governor General and shut down Parliament. The anti-democratic things that have occurred are piling on and piling on and piling on to the point that so many Canadians are saying, I'm terrified. I can't take it anymore and I'm terrified. And this is where I think it's important. This is the message for Greens, and I want to be sure that I share it with you because it's a message of hope and optimism. We must not be afraid. That is exactly what Stephen Harper wants us. He wants us to be afraid of extremist jihadi terrorists. He wants us to be afraid of women wearing a niqab. He wants us to be afraid of First Nations on the line against pipelines. He wants us to be afraid of each other. And he particularly doesn't mind if we're afraid of him, because fear-based thinking is never very smart. When you're making a decision because you're afraid, you can't see the right direction. So the message for Greens, and all of you, I'm so hopeful and I'm so grateful that you're here tonight to recognize this 4-year anniversary and launch a re-election campaign, that we must win. I hope a lot of you are willing to knock on doors again. I hope a lot of you are willing to make phone calls. I hope a lot of you will leave Saanich Gulf Islands and make sure we elect Francis Littman in the Esquimalt Saanich suit, and elect Joanne Roberts in Victoria, and elect Fran Hunt Janucci in Cowichan, Malahat, Langford, and Paul Manley in Nanaimo Ladysmith, and Glenn Sollitt in Courtney Alberni, and Brenda Sayers in North Island, Powell River. We all need to go together to Ottawa. But the message we have to carry is this. Guess what? Peter MacKay didn't just quit because he thought they were about to win. John Barrett didn't quit because he thought they were about to win. There's 30 Conservative MPs not running again. Guess what? They've kind of gotten the idea that this is when the jig is up. And Stephen Harper will be leaving 24 Sussex Drive. And I hope he has a wonderful, fulfilling retirement anywhere but in Ottawa. We can change everything in 2015. We will change everything in 2015. Standing between us now and success at a climate negotiation to take place in December in Paris, one of the obstacles for the world is the Government of Canada. We can change that. One of the things we have to do is not only win this election and win lots of Green seats, but be prepared to go to Parliament and change the way politics is conducted, to insist on cooperation and insist that parties that care about the same things more or less should put aside differences in the interests of the planet and the country and our communities and our families and work together. I know we can do this. You know, Westminster parliamentary democracy, and you've probably heard me rant about democracy a lot if you ever come to any of my meetings, I talk about democracy. Westminster parliamentary democracy is about electing members of Parliament to represent their constituents. And those constituents want their members of Parliament to actually do good work in the interest of taking care of the whole country, which means paying attention to a successful and vibrant economy and finding jobs for young people and making sure that we eradicate poverty and homelessness and making sure we expand our healthcare system, protect it, but build on it and bring in pharmacare. There are things Canadians want so much, and they're sick and tired of old leaders and old parties saying, oh, those things just aren't on in the 21st century. Oh, we've entered a globalized economy and we all work in the interests of the largest global multinationals, not in the interests of small Canadian companies or in the interest of communities or in the interest of knitting us together as a country, because we do all, as Canadians, have much more in common than we could ever have in the difference. And fear-based policies, as I mentioned, that are all about dividing us, are toxic in a healthy democracy. We have to reach out and find those things that we have in common and build on those. So when the wonderful choir was singing, and thanks to Dennis Donnelly and friends, I don't know, you'd have no idea how much it meant to me that you sang If I Had a Hammer. Because I'm an old folkie, and I actually had the great honor of knowing Pete Seeger and singing it once with him at a conference in Ottawa. And as you were singing, I was thinking, that's a rallying cry for Greens. Because we are a political party. We're serious. We'll win seats. We want to sweep Vancouver Island, take it right across the Lower Mainland, elect Lynn Quarmby, Claire Martin, Ken Malamed, Wes Reagan. We've got great candidates in the Vancouver area. We've got great candidates everywhere. We just had the announcement, which you may have missed, that the Guelph riding Green candidate has just, after 15 years, stepped down. Gord Miller was Ontario's Commissioner for the Environment. And he's now the Green Party candidate in Guelph. And he will win. And we have, of course, Bruce Heyer and Thunder Bay Superior North. We have brilliant candidates in Quebec. We don't get a lot of press outside of Quebec about what's happening. But when André Belle-Île, who's a well-known Quebec environmentalist, announced he was running, and he announced on the long weekend Monday in Quebec, dominated the media all day long, lots of coverage, and guess who he's going to defeat? Minister of Public Safety, Stephen Blaney. It's going to be nice. And Danielle Green, my second deputy leader, who's running in Montreal, longtime environmentalist, extremely well-known, well-loved Quebec actor and performer and comedian, J.C. Lauzon. I could go on and on. We've got great candidates right across the country and winning seats right through to the Maritimes, where New Brunswick Greens and PEI Greens have led the way. But what I was thinking about was that we are a movement, yes, a political party, but we're not about seeking power for ourselves. We're about wresting power from people who are dangerous when they hold it. We're about bringing power back to citizens, back to our communities, and back to the fundamental things that make us Canadian, which have more to do with taking care of each other than fearing each other, more to do with a safety net that keeps people from falling through the cracks than exploiting the fear that people have that one day it could be them falling through those cracks, so they're afraid to reach out and help, and they become more insular. Stephen Harper has tried to remake our values, remake our idea of who we are. And we reject that fear and we embrace a hope, because we have the hammer of justice, we have the bell of freedom, and we have a song to sing about the love between our brothers and our sisters all over this land, because the Green Party isn't fueled by money and the Green Party isn't fueled by corporate interests. Never said it before out loud, but here you go. The Green Party is fueled by love. Next time, we will save Parliament. We will save Canada. Thank you.